So remember to take clear notes, show all your workings, listen to instructions and pause the video when you're told, and remember you can ask for support if needed. So this lesson is all about calculating relative frequency from actual events. So we've already talked about how events, just because they're unlikely doesn't mean that they're impossible to happen. I mean, you encounter this in real life every day, you know, and lots of results come out, someone does win, however unlikely that is. Let's take something a bit more familiar. We have a six-sided fair dice, okay? The probability of getting a 2 on it is 1 out of 6, because there's one way of getting a 2 out of 6 possibilities. So if I was to roll the dice 6 times, I'd expect at least once to get a 2. If I was to roll it 12 times, I'd expect to get a 2 twice. But is this guaranteed to happen? Does it always happen? Well, my advice is go off and actually try it. This leads us to something called relative frequency. Now, relative frequency is different to probability. Relative frequency deals with actual results from things that have actually been done, or experiments that have been, in theory, carried out. So in this instance, we have a coin toss experiment in which a coin's tossed 50 times, and we're focused on getting the tails. And I did the experiment, and I actually got 27 tails out of the 50 attempts. To work out the relative frequency, I take the number of successful trials. In this case, because I was focused on the tails, it's the number 27, because I got 27 of them, and over that I put there the number of trials, which is 50. Okay, so the denominator is 50. So very simply, the relative frequency of getting a tail in this experiment is 27 out of 50. Now, quite often on these questions, you have to comment on the fairness of the experiment. So was this a fair coin? Well, to answer that, I have to ask myself, how many tails would I expect to get? If it was a fair coin, I should get a tails half the time, so 25 out of 50. I got 27. Okay, so that's only slightly over. So I could be fairly sure that this was a fair coin. Not 100% convinced, but pretty certain that this was a fair coin. So we're roughly at that halfway point. What could I do to reinforce my conclusion? Well, the same thing that I do for any science experiment. I'd actually repeat it, get more data in, see if that I still stay close to halfway. So here's a question that often comes up in this topic. Okay, part A, write down the relative frequency of landing the dice on a 6 after it's been rolled 50 times, and we've got 37 sixes. So very simply, my relative frequency, all I've got to do, I got 37 sixes, and that was out of 50 rolls. Relative frequency done. So now I have to ask myself, was it a biased dice? Was it biased towards landing on a 6? So I need to ask myself the question, how many 6s would I expect? Well, I know that the probability of getting a 6 is 1 out of 6. I know that. Now, if I was to roll the dice 50 times, okay, I would expect roughly, there's my sign for approximately, 8 6s. I'd be looking to get a 6 1/6 of the time. Okay, 1/6 of the 50. So that's roughly 8 times. I've got a 6 37 times, way more than a 6 of the time, way more than half of the time as well. So I think we can be fairly certain that this dice is biased towards landing on 6. So here's a question for you to attempt. Pause the video and then we'll look at the answer. There's the answer to that question. Here's another question for you to attempt. Pause the video, and when you're ready, press play for the answer. And there's the answer. So here's another question. Pause the video, and when you're ready, press play for the answer. Well, the answer this time, well, how many times was my experiment done? A total of 60 times. I'm focused on it landing heads up, which is 27 out of 60, so my answer is B. Here's another question. Pause the video, and when you're ready, press play to answer the question. So we've got a coin thrown 30 times, relative frequency on a tail, 20 out of 30. Now it's entirely possible that some questions might ask us to simplify that as a number, which would be, in this case, would be 2/3 of the time. So here we go, here's another question. Pause the video and then play when you're ready to get the answer. So on this question, I know I've been rolled 150 times, so straight away I need a fraction out of 150. I've got a 1 68 times, which is why my answer is B. Pause the video, and when you're ready, press play for the answer. So in this case, I need to know my total. 23 games drawn, 10 games drawn, 23 games won, and 15 games lost. How many is that altogether? It gives us a total of 48. Okay, so I know straight away that this is going to be out of 48. What's the relative frequency of a win? Well, it's 23 games out of that 48. There we go. The answer is D. So here's an exam question on all this. Okay, I have a spinner, spin 100 times. Is the spinner fair? Well, it's a four-sided spinner. If it's fair, I'm looking for everything to roughly be happening a quarter of the time. Right, so I'm looking for numbers roughly around 25. So do I have numbers that are roughly around 25? Yes. So is the spinner fair? Yes, more than likely it's fair.